I would like to end my speech with a message from my favorite movie in the whole world, 10 Things I Hate About You. Melina's celebrity crush, Heath Ledger's character says, "Don't let anyone ever make you feel like you don't deserve what you want. Go for it." Even though sometimes I feel like I can't do something, I think of this quote and it gives me encouragement, as I did writing this graduation speech, and as I will in high school next year. Thank you.
When I started this year, I knew Alex pretty well. But over time, I learned a lot more about him, especially after I was put in a room with him at MMUN. Alex is a very good leader, a great friend, and also an amazing manager. He can be very stubborn sometimes, especially when it comes to food. Alex is willing to do anything to protect his food. My favorite thing about Alex is his drawing skills and his frog hat. Alex is willing to help people when they're struggling on a job or with homework that he knows how to do. You will always find his random drawings on whiteboards around the park house. You can always find Alex playing basketball, helping someone, or fiddling with a Rubik's Cube he brought from home. Alex, we will all miss you, and the intermediates will not be the same without you. Good luck in high school. You have been a good friend among us. Please welcome Alex Marks.
I've been going to Butler Montessori since I was in 4th grade, and I've learned a lot from all my amazing teachers and friends throughout the years. Ever since I visited here in 3rd grade, I have felt welcome, and now Butler almost feels like a second home. There were some times that were hard, or some things that I really didn't want to sit through, but I did. Now, 5 years later, I am grateful that I did, because looking back, there are way more good things that happened that outnumber the bad, embarrassing, or boring things. So today, I think I'll just tell some stories of the things that happened, bad or good, because they both matter and they are both equally important. When I was in 4th grade, there was a boy named Camden. He graduated from Butler 2 years ago, so he would have been in 5th or 6th grade. Camden was a really cool guy, and I really wanted to be friends with him. This would turn out to be harder than I thought it would be. When I was in 4th grade, I didn't talk at all, so when I thought I was hanging out with Camden, I was really just tagging along. While I was tagging along, I was witness to a lot of things. At recess, we would walk to a place in the woods that was kind of hard to get to and had a very small clearing. None of the teachers knew where it was, so it was the perfect hiding spot. At recess, almost every day, with a small group of friends, we walked over to this hidden spot in the woods and just hung out. One day, Camden went ahead of the group, and when the rest of us got there, he was just digging a hole, right in the middle of the clearing. No explanation. He just kept digging. Then eventually, he stopped. Honestly, after that, I have no idea what happened, but I will always remember Camden doing random things like this. As I started moving up to the intermediates, I got more and more familiar with my surroundings. I made more friends and started talking to other people outside my friend group. In the intermediates, I could finally feel at home, so much so that near the end of the year, I was bored at my house and missed hanging out with my friends. 7th grade was probably the best year of my life. I had a lot of friends, schoolwork wasn't that hard, and of course, there were people that I could talk to and have fun with. Last year, for our spring trip, we went to California, probably one of the most interesting and amazing places I've been to. For the first 2 or 3 days, we stayed in a hostel in San Francisco. During the day, we would learn things about the area, like going to Angel Island or just exploring the city. But after walking and exploring for hours, the whole class would reconvene at the hostel and relax for a bit before eating and having our daily dose of roses, buds, and thorns, which was still very new to me. One night, while we were circling up, we met a guy. He was really cool. His name was Anthony, I think. He had a banana, so we called him Banana Man. He didn't seem bothered, but no one was sure if he actually liked our group, as we did take up a lot of the space. After our stay in San Francisco, we took a 1 or 2 hour bus ride to Occidental. The reason for this drive was to stay at a camp called CYO. It was pretty cool because we stayed in cabins with AC in groups of 6 or 7. And we did camp-like things. We hiked and did general outdoor activities. And one day we even drove to the beach, even though it was still really cold. On the last day before we left, to wrap everything up, we got back in one group and did an activity called New Eyes. Now I know that some of the 8th and 9th graders might want to forget or put off this night and just not talk about it. But I think that this night should be remembered because even though almost everyone got really emotional, we still need to remember the sad things in life because they are essential to knowing what happiness is. And at that moment, as most of the class was in tears, I wasn't, because finally I realized that these were my people. These were my friends and family. These were the people I spent a whole year with. And these were the people that I knew the most. Now I know that I should probably be ending this speech off with something that happened this year, as it would be my last year at Butler. But those moments from last year were very important to me, and I think that's what matters. I think that 1 week, those 7 days, were more important and impactful than the rest of my time at Butler. Because in those 7 days, I bonded with those people, and those people became true friends. Friends that I would never forget. Because of that, I don't think I could ever forget my experiences at Butler, or the people who helped me through it. From Dylan, probably my only friend in 4th grade, to my teachers, Miss Wilson, Miss Rodwin, Senora, Mr. Jones, Miss Daly, Hugh, Miss Radigan, and Miss Madalena. And finally, this class, the intermediate class of 2023. I've talked about how good and bad things are intertwined, how they're essential to knowing the other. I think this is one of the greatest lessons being at Butler has taught me. So thank you to Butler and all the people I've mentioned for teaching me all these lessons, intentional or not. I will never forget the experiences Butler has given me and the people I've met here. Thank you.
Dylan is a funny, outgoing, and hardworking person. He is a great garden manager because he makes hard work become fun. He makes sure that everyone is doing their part in helping to get work done. He's a very kind, considerate, smart, and a great addition to our community. At the beginning of the year, I didn't know Dylan that much. But after being in the same work period as him, in the spring trip group, I know that he is a kind person who always helps his fellow classmates whenever needed. When we were planning the spring trip, Dylan helped our group by making sure that everything was ready before the trip started. Dylan was also the one who came up with the nickname Mr. Four for Mr. Jones. I can't even imagine a world where everyone in our class called Mr. Four Mr. Jones. Dylan is a hardworking person and a great addition to our community. This has been an amazing year, and it wouldn't have been the same without him. Please welcome Dylan Couch.
Hi, my name is Dylan Kautz, and I have been going to Butler since my 2nd year in primary. Butler has created a love for nature for me ever since my 1st year. I remember pinpricking a picture of the sun on my first day with a thumbtack, crying and crying, saying I just wanted to go home. But soon after, I loved coming to school, learning to button shirts, polish shoes, and even learn basic math. Recess was fun with the ability to play anywhere on the playground or splash around in the creek with our boots. But our favorite game had to have been gravel, even though none of us really knew all the rules. Pizza Fridays were also a really big event in primary, where we would order pizza on Thursday and get it for lunch the next day. Primary was loads of fun, but all of a sudden it ended and I had to move up to lower elementary. My birthday was right on the cusp of the school year in late September, so they moved me up a year early, and I was the smallest kid in the class. I'm pretty sure that the first day of lower L was the hardest day for me at Butler, once again crying numerous times because I was in a new environment with older, bigger, and scarier kids. But after talking to some of the other students, I realized that most of them weren't scary at all, and were barely any different than me. The majority of the memories I have from lower elementary were playing infected at the forts past the ropes course, and making huts out of sticks. But I think the biggest part of lower elementary was that it was where you first learned about independence. For example, the going outs we would go on were completely planned by the students, with the money, food, activities, and chaperones all being decided by the kids in charge. I remember going to Baltimore Aquarium 3 different times for going outs due to my love for the ocean and also because it was a great way to spend a day out of the classroom. But after lower elementary, I eventually moved up to upper L, which was a much easier transition for me. Upper L was where elementary started to merge into middle school. While it was still very similar to lower elementary, the work we did was much more complicated, with complex concepts like cube root being introduced. My first year of upper elementary took place in the big open classroom behind the main office in the main building, which is one of my favorite classrooms in the whole school because of how much time I've spent there over many different years. However, I didn't stay in that class However, I didn't stay in that class for long in upper elementary because of COVID in my 5th grade year. We all had to go online, which completely changed the vibe I got from upper L, and it seemed much less engaging and interactive. While at first I thought it would be fun to be at home and not at school, I soon realized that I missed being at school, learning with the materials rather than just Zoom calls and Google Classroom. So when we were given the opportunity to come back to Butler, I was all for it, even though it wasn't the same as being in Butler pre-COVID. We all had to social distance and had our own table in the multipurpose room, but I still enjoyed being back at school on the campus rather than my couch. Towards the end of the 6th grade year, pretty much all of us had come back from being online, and we all got ready for the intermediates by having lessons once a week where we would start the day with Ms. Daly teaching us advanced math, and then advanced English classes with Ms. Robin, and later ending the day with the whole upper L class taking Spanish with Senora. After upper elementary was over, I remember coming to the summer intermediate program and thinking, wow, this is nothing like upper elementary. After finding out about outdoor jobs, the different units, and the freedom to explore the whole campus. During my first year in intermediates, I made a promise to myself to do farmers market every single week that I had the opportunity to, which didn't last long, because I loved selling products that we made, knowing that our community would benefit from it with the crazy trips we would go on. Another addition that the intermediates had brought was homework. We had assignments in the upper elementary that were almost like homework, but it wasn't as much as the intermediates. My 7th grade year was terrible in terms of how I was getting my homework done because I'm a major procrastinator, and I barely got some of my homework done in time. Fortunately for me, the teachers were used to it and gave us a year to get adjusted to the new format. Our year ended up with us going on a huge trip to California where we started in San Francisco and later went to a campsite called CYO. The point of the trips were to get us all to bond, and one part I think is really cool about the trips is how the teachers will make the most diverse and seemingly random groups, but they end up working really well together at the end and having a great time. One funny memory from San Francisco is when our group took the trolley while trying to get to the trolley museum, but we ended up taking it all the way to its final destination when we were only supposed to go a few stops, causing us to lose a lot of time and walk up straight up a huge hill. After walking in a random direction, we tried to find the trolley museum, but it turned out to be right next to us at the top of the hill. These funny memories are the kinds that are stuck in my head and I will never forget even when I'm an adult. I even have memories from this fall trip, like waking up completely soaked in a tent and just wanting to take a nice warm shower while camping in Ohiopyle, Pennsylvania, or the hilarious games of telephone in our tents at Chewonki in Wiscasset, Maine. It's crazy to think that I won't have any more big memories at Butler after I leave to go to high school, but I'm ready for what's next at QO. I'm excited to continue and start the beginning of the rest of my life outside of Butler, and I'll always make sure to visit my second home every once in a while. For thank yous, I'd like to thank my friends and classmates for making every day fun when coming to school. I'd like to thank my teachers for always looking out for the students and dedicating time and effort to helping us grow as people. I would also like to thank my family for finding and giving me the opportunity to go to this amazing school, but most importantly, I would like to thank Butler Montessori for being a huge part of my life that I will never forget. Thank you.
At the very beginning of this year, I remember coming into the intermediates and thinking the age groups were unusual. Of course, we weren't exactly normal either. They had strange inside jokes, weird conversations, and names for inanimate objects. In the midst of all this tomfoolery, the most reasonable person was, at first glance, shy, quiet, and serious. But she was also one of the friendliest figures, so we all got to know her really well. In addition to being quiet and serious, she has an amazing sense of humor and an easygoing disposition. She is almost always smiling, and somehow, she always manages to put up with our shenanigans. This wonderful person is Beetsy Cook. Beetsy is a really responsible person. She always keeps a cool head, even when no one around her can. I remember, just a couple weeks ago, we were baking things to sell for the play. There were lots of people in the kitchen, and everyone was yelling at each other. We were approaching disaster when Beetsy stepped in and said, "Everybody, take a deep breath. and we were able to avoid calamity. Beetsy, I don't know what we're going to do without you next year. I hope you have fun in high school, and you'd better visit us all. Please welcome Beetsy Cook. At first, I wasn't sure why this speech was so hard for me to write, but I think it's because it hadn't completely sunk in yet that I'm really leaving. On one of my first intermediate trips, Miss Rodwin said something that really resonated with me. We were on the bus going back to school, and she said 30 minutes until we get home. It seems like nothing now, and she says it all the time, but it really struck me as weird, because I was like, we're going back to school, not my house. But pretty soon, I realized what she meant. I've gone to Butler for 5 years, so it really does feel like a second home. I first visited Butler in 3rd grade, and one of the first students I met was Katya. We first met by the lockers, where she stood over me with her hands on her hips and very seriously asked me how old I was. I replied, and she told me she was a year older than me, which I now know was a lie because she's younger than me. Despite how intimidating of a first impression it was, I really liked Butler. Of course, Butler has an incredible campus, and the education you get is amazing. But what I really think sets it apart from other schools is the people. What really solidified this belief for me was when we were doing online learning during COVID. The majority of my 5th and 6th grade years were online. And even though it was hard, we still had lessons every day, and the teachers did their best to keep us involved in our work. Almost every school day when we were online, we'd FaceTime each other to do homework or just to talk, and that was really what made it bearable. I think without each other, we all would have gone completely insane. The intermediate program was super different from the elementary, but in a good way. We had actual classes every day, homework, lots of fun trips, community lunch, and we could go out on our own for recess pretty much anywhere on campus. We talk about community a lot in the intermediates, and there are lots of different ways we build community. But one of the ways that I think is the most effective is what Ms. Rodwin calls bonding through suffering. Last year, we went on a hike that did exactly that. It wasn't supposed to be bonding through suffering, though. Everyone, including the teachers that planned the trip, thought that we were going to go on a nice 5-mile hike at Catoctin Mountain Park. When we got there, the people in the visitor center warned us that there was a little ice on the mountain, but we decided to go anyway. As soon as we started hiking, we realized they had severely underestimated the amount of snow and ice. We were all falling and slipping, and it took forever to move like 10 feet down the trail. After a while, we stopped to eat lunch, and then decided we should just head back. On the way back, most of us opted to just slide down the mountain on our butts because it was easier than trying to stay standing. We found out, once we got back, that we'd gone less than a mile of what was supposed to be an easy 5-mile hike. This is one of the memories of being in the intermediates that really stands out to me, because we all had to help each other and work together, and we still talk and complain about it to this day. I'm trying to keep this speech brief, but there are some people I'd like to thank. To my parents, thank you for always supporting me and sending me to Butler. Thank you to all of my teachers over the past 5 years for working so hard to make school fun and interesting. And lastly, thank you to all my classmates for being so entertaining and making this year so much fun. This community is so important to me, and I have so many amazing memories here that I'll never forget. And although I'm sad to be leaving, I'm also excited to move on to high school. Thank you.
This 8th year is kind, compassionate, and always willing to help you out, whether she gains something from it or not. She cares deeply about each and every one of her friends from the bottom of her heart and puts her all into everything she does. She is a good manager and cares about her job a lot. As a 7th year, it was very fun to work with her on jobs this year. She wouldn't keep you forever on the job, but she would also manage to get a lot of things done. She loves animals and would gladly spend her time taking care of them. She is outdoorsy and is very strong. She also loves spending time in nature and can often be seen taking a walk to the pond during recess. This person is extremely resilient, carefree, open-minded, and positive. She has been a wonderful part of the intermediate community, and we will miss her bright and positive personality that can brighten up any day. Please welcome Adriana.